Hi, I'm Lara Briden. I'm a naturopath and author of the book Period Repair Manual, Every Woman's Guide to Better Periods. Today, we're going to look at the close connection between endometriosis and digestion problems. 3 strategies for improving endometriosis by improving digestion, and a reminder that not all pelvic pain is from endometriosis lesions, even when the lesions are present. As you may know, there's a close connection between endometriosis and digestion problems, such as IBS or irritable bowel syndrome. For one thing, both endo and IBS can present with similar symptoms, such as bloating, nausea, diarrhea, cramping, and pain. This symptom overlap can make it challenging to find the right diagnosis. So be sure to alert your doctor to endo-specific symptoms, such as pain with sex or pain referred to the back. It is also quite common to have both endometriosis and IBS. In fact, up to 90% of women with endometriosis report bowel symptoms. But why? One possible explanation is that endometriosis can directly cause gut problems because endometriosis lesions and adhesions can occur on the bowel. Those lesions can cause pain, obstruction, and altered bowel function, such as diarrhea or constipation. Another possibility is that endometriosis indirectly causes bowel problems because of inflammation and visceral hypersensitivity, which is heightened pain sensitivity in the abdomen and pelvis. In other words, the chronic inflammatory environment created by the endometriosis lesions can dysregulate and sensitize the nervous system, leading to pain and bowel symptoms. Yet another intriguing possibility is that gut problems may contribute, at least in part, to the disease process of endometriosis. But how? Well, for one thing, visceral hypersensitivity can act in the other direction, with IBS causing nervous system hypersensitivity that worsens endopain. Furthermore, disruptions of gut bacteria, known as dysbiosis, can generate inflammation, which can drive or even cause endometriosis. Specifically, there's intriguing research into how bacterial toxins, possibly coming from the gut, can directly contribute to the disease process of endometriosis. Those bacterial endotoxins can enter the pelvic cavity via several pathways, including increased intestinal permeability or leaky gut. It's called the bacterial contamination theory of endometriosis. The great news is that you can often improve endometriosis symptoms simply by treating your gut. So, let's look at some gut treating and therefore potentially pain treating strategies. Tip number 1 is to try avoiding any food sensitivity, especially wheat and dairy products, including bread, cereal, baked goods, also yogurt or cheese, and of course, milky coffees. If you're going to try this approach, maybe talk to your GP about first screening for celiac disease, just to rule out that more serious condition. And you'll probably want to give this approach at least 3 months to see if it helps, because that's how long it can take to see results. As to why it can be helpful to avoid wheat and dairy, it's not usually because of celiac disease, but as mentioned, it's important to rule that out. Likewise, it's not usually because of lactose sensitivity, although it can be. Commonly, a wheat or dairy sensitivity could be about a condition called non-celiac gluten sensitivity or a reaction to inflammatory opioid peptides derived from the proteins gluten from wheat or casein from dairy, or FODMAPs, which are fermentable carbohydrates that can aggravate a condition called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO. One or all of these situations can promote digestion symptoms, intestinal permeability, and all the immune dysfunction and inflammation that can drive endometriosis. I mentioned some of the technical terms just in case you want to talk to your clinician about them, but you don't have to remember them. And on the topic of FODMAPs, yes, wheat and most dairy products are FODMAP containing foods, making a wheat free, dairy free diet a version or a partial low FODMAP diet. It's not wheat free, dairy free is not completely low FODMAP because, of course, there are other FODMAP containing foods. And there have been a few clinical trials into a low FODMAP diet for endometriosis. Another detail in all of this is that A2 dairy, including, for example, sheep or goat dairy, can often be okay because it doesn't have the same casein, so it doesn't produce the inflammatory opioid peptide mentioned earlier. As to how strictly you need to be when avoiding wheat and dairy, it does not usually need to be super strict except when autoimmune conditions are present. Autoimmune means the immune system is attacking the body's own tissues. A common example is Hashimoto's thyroid disease, and there is some evidence that gluten can promote autoimmune conditions like that. So, in that case, a trial of strict gluten avoidance may be necessary to also get relief from the pelvic pain. And note that a wheat free, dairy free diet is most likely to be helpful when there are other signs and symptoms of food sensitivities, such as allergies, autoimmune, just mentioned, or headaches, for example. Tip number 2 for gut health and endometriosis is to try the simple supplement zinc because zinc can improve intestinal permeability or leaky gut. That's according to a 2023 study, which found that zinc can help to prevent or treat intestinal permeability by improving the seal of the gut's tight junctions. Again, a technical term that you don't have to remember. And importantly, preventing intestinal permeability can potentially prevent or improve all the inflammation and immune dysfunction associated with the bacterial contamination hypothesis mentioned earlier. Of course, zinc has other benefits, such as actively reducing inflammation, dialing down pain signals, altering gene expression, and modulating macrophages, or the activity of macrophages. Macrophages are immune cells that are heavily involved in the inflammation process of endometriosis. And again, I mentioned that technical term only in case you want to talk to someone, maybe your naturopath, about it. All of zinc's beneficial effects on the gut and immune function are probably why zinc deficiency has been found to play a role in the development of endometriosis. And another tip is that zinc is most likely to be helpful when intake is insufficient, or in other words, zinc is deficient, such as with a vegan or plant-based diet. There's very little zinc in that diet. The other thing to know about zinc is on an empty stomach, zinc can cause nausea, so it's really important to take the therapeutic dose of 30 milligrams together with food, preferably at the end of a large meal. And again, you want to give it at least 3 months to see a change. Tip number 3 of treating gut to improve endometriosis is to consider a course of the antimicrobial supplement berberine, which is the active ingredient in herbal medicine such as golden seal or berberine. And also berberine just is available on its own as an extract. Because berberine is antimicrobial or naturally antibiotic, it can reduce the overgrowth of small intestinal bacteria or SIBO and improve intestinal permeability, thus potentially reducing exposure to the bacterial toxins that, according to the bacterial contamination hypothesis, could be driving endometriosis and pelvic pain. Like zinc, berberine has other benefits, such as actively reducing inflammation, dialing down pain signals, altering gene expression, and modulating macrophage activity. Berberine may also help to lower estrogen. In my experience with patients, berberine is one of the stronger treatments for endometriosis and pelvic pain, and is most likely to be helpful if there's also strong symptoms of SIBO or IBS, which, as we've seen, there often are. Ideally, berberine should be taken under the guidance of a clinician, such as a naturopath, herbalist, or pharmacist. That's because there are several safety considerations for berberine, such as the fact that it can interact with some types of medications. Berberine is also not safe during pregnancy or breastfeeding. And again, you want to give it 3 months to see a response. That's true for any kind of natural treatment for pelvic pain or endometriosis. Okay, so those are some of my top strategies that have worked for many of my patients. But please remember, of course, there's no one size fits all treatment for endometriosis, including no one size fits all nutritional approach. For example, some women get dramatic results from avoiding wheat and dairy, while others might not notice as much. And that's because there are just really so many potential drivers of endometriosis and pelvic pain, including increased susceptibility due to genetics or epigenetics. Epigenetics is the altered expression of genes as a result of things like environmental toxins. Of course, genetics and epigenetics are why endometriosis runs in families. There's also the intestinal permeability and immune dysfunction and inflammation that I've been trying to address with my 3 tips. Beyond that, other drivers of endometriosis and pelvic pain include altered estrogen metabolism, progesterone resistance, and, of course, dysregulation of the nervous system, including things like neurogenic inflammation, visceral hypersensitivity that I mentioned, and imbalances in the autonomic nervous system. So you might need to look at something like that. There is also the simple fact that not all pelvic pain is the result of endometriosis lesions, even when the lesions are present. In fact, there's growing evidence that at least some of the time, endometriosis lesions can be incidental or physiological, which means temporary, and not the main cause of pain. That's why it's so crucial to take a broad lens and tackle all potential drivers, including the gut and, as mentioned, the autonomic nervous system. The takeaway for today is that there's a close connection between gut health, endometriosis, and pelvic pain. Therefore, fix your gut and you might fix your pain. As a review, the strategies I've talked about today include a trial avoidance of wheat, dairy, or other food sensitivity, a trial of a zinc supplement, always taken with food. And this is something to try, especially if you don't eat a lot of animal products and are therefore likely to be deficient in zinc. And finally, you could consider a course of the herbal medicine berberine, preferably under the guidance of a clinician. It is also possible to try these 3 things all together. They can work in parallel with each other. Thank you so much for your attention, and I hope that's been helpful. All the best on your journey to find long lasting relief from pain.